Right. Now, let me ask you this. There are so many assessments out there in this day and age, especially we got, kind of the tried and true DISC, Myers-Briggs, Strength Finder. What drew you to the Enneagram?
Yeah, so I believe that as a founder, or really anybody within a leadership position in a company, you have this unique opportunity to like learn about yourself while you're building a company because you get to see the company like kind of mirror you. And I've done all the other tests, the Myers-Briggs of the world, and they don't really like get to who are you at your core or like who are you at your soul. It's a lot of like, how do you show up at work? And for me and my philosophy on business and my philosophy on people is more about understanding who you are as a human and how you tick. And as I call it in Enneagram, like the snake in your head and like what's the language of that snake and how does it talk to you? Because it's different for everybody. But helping people see that first and foremost for themselves and then see that as like how does it show up at work was a lot more important to me than like what's your work style, which is interesting, but I don't think is as meaningful.
Yeah, I always appreciate how it can give some insight on behaviors, but to your point, it goes deeper than that. And I like the snake in your head analogy. So, Eliza, so you are coming to us from the HR world. And I know that you have a lot of education, your own kind of how to work with people, how to understand people. What was your initial thoughts when you were introduced to the Enneagram?
Yeah, I think Enneagram to me, I mean, to Mike's point, there's so many different tests out there, and had used DISC and some others in a past life, and felt like one, they could be a bit surface level, and second, there wasn't great commonality of language. So one of the things that I've really loved about Enneagram, in addition to the fact that I think it helps you go deeper from an identity exploration, is that it gives our employees common language to talk to each other that's easy to use, and pretty sticky. And so we've just found that the adoption of Enneagram is so much easier than some of the other assessments that I've used in the past. If you spend any time in our office and you walk around, you can hear people referencing their type and saying like, "Oh, I showed up in this way in this meeting because so-and-so's an 8 and I'm a 2." So I think the adoption has just felt really easy and clean.
I love that. Common language is something I hear a lot of others say as well. So now we had met last year, and I was able to come out for, I think it was just an hour at your company retreat. But prior to that, we had had a meeting, and Mike had shared how you had rolled this out months, years, potentially even beforehand. Would you share a little bit about how you introduced the Enneagram to your group? What did you do? I know that there were some small group activities involved. Anything that you can share, I would love to hear about.
Yeah.
Should start with Mike for sure, because I think this was predating my time.
Okay, so I mean, just tactically, for those that want to like introduce Enneagram to their company, the best test that I know of is Integrative 9 online. I think it is an amazing test. The basic version is fine. You don't need the expensive version, but it's about $60 and you just pay for people to go get tested. And what I like to say is like I don't really like the content of the packet that you receive. It's like you're a type 2 and here's all this information. I send people to the Enneagram Institute, which I think has the best information online about like what does a type 2 mean or what does a type 7 mean. And then what we would do is we'd get groups together, usually like a department, so like the marketing department, and I would teach a little bit about Enneagram, which I'm happy to talk about my philosophy of it, but I teach a little bit about Enneagram, talk about each of the types and the snake in their head, the thing that keeps them out of consciousness, the things that they're thinking about. And then we'd go around the room and we'd go one by one, and it's like, okay, Jeremy, what do people think that he is? Ready? Vote. One, two, three. And people put up their hands for like four, five, six. And he's like, well, actually, I'm a 2. People are like, oh. And then they have to share how that resonates with them. And it was a really great way to have like people understand each other's types. It's some of the deepest conversations I've seen here, kind of like I'm a 2, and here was my background, and here's probably how I ended up that way. And yeah, it was like a really, really great way to build team and camaraderie. That was how it was introduced into the company.
The only other thing I'd add is You ran that executive session first that I thought was like such a great way to start. Our executive team did it, and we did like, I think it was like a half day, really dug into like, what does that mean for how you show up at home, how you show up at work. And I felt like that was such a foundational part of building team at the highest level. And then, we've done it throughout the rest of the company.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Kind of get that leadership buy-in before you start rolling it out. Um, just so the listeners kind of have a picture of when we say roll it out to the company, whatever you could tell us about, I think at the time that we had talked last year, there was about 200 people at the company.
Yep.
Anything that you could share us about the size, any recent growth, any kind of culture themes that your group has?
Yeah, we're still about 200 people. And when we say roll it out, it was essentially you go department by department. And I had decided that I wanted to teach it, like rather than bring in an external resource, because Enneagram has been something I've been like very passionate about for a very long time. Took me probably like maybe 5 years of doing Enneagram myself before I was like, I should bring this into my company. And so, it was like basically me sitting with different groups of people within the company and teaching my philosophy on Enneagram, what it means, and then everyone sharing their types.
And now that everyone, we continued that. So basically like any new employees, we do them
Okay.
in groups that Mike does trainings for. And what's fun is at our annual summit, which is like basically our annual time that the whole company comes together, we do a trip. We do some Enneagram work there that you'll remember from, I think last year, the year before when you came. So we did like a speaker series, and then we have folks sit by Enneagram type at certain meals so that they can connect and kind of continue learning.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Uh, any specific responses or feedback from the group when you initially rolled this out? Like what were the teams thinking, the different departments thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think people really appreciated the um like the depth of conversation, and that a company wanted people to understand these things about themselves. And I saw people very quickly like recognizing like, oh, this isn't about how I show up at work. It's like I shared this with my spouse, and they're like, that's spot on, and they're like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, like this isn't just about work, is it? It's about like my whole life. And of course you had your on the Enneagram, there's like a type 6, which is a skeptic. And so they're like, I don't know about this. And then a type
Yeah.
5 that likes to research stuff is like, I need to read more about this before I'm
Yes.
gonna like buy into this. Everyone's playing their types, which is so fun to watch. Somebody will say something and I'm like, well, you're a type 5. That's like you're just like straight in your pattern.
This
Great.
tracks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
totally tracks. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right.
As we're talking about how you rolled it out, is there any lessons learned with rolling it out, whether the initial introduction or how you bring it to new hires, that you would say, oh, we did this and we would recommend not doing it this way? Any kind of don'ts as we're talking about rolling it out?
I'm curious if you'll have the same feeling that I do, but I think the sessions that have been most powerful have been when there's like some relationship built with the group beforehand.
Okay.
So that was true for the executive team. That's true for many departments. I mean, you might have one or two new hires, but predominantly folks have like worked together. They have some base understanding of each other. And I'm remembering one session we did that was some smaller departments together. And so they didn't all work together. And I think there's just like a different way to facilitate that that helps to build connection and like vulnerability faster in groups that don't have a baseline there. I don't know if that felt true. You were the
Yeah.
facilitator, so you
No,
might
that
have
felt
different.
true. I mean, certainly it made it harder to do the guessing. They're like,
Yeah.
I don't even know who this person is.
Yeah.
I also think that like if I'm sure your listeners are passionate about the Enneagram, you want that person to teach. We
Mm.
tried to like have somebody on Eliza's team like roll it out, and then it just becomes kind of like a personality test because it's like the person there's so much nuance in the Enneagram. I mean, you can spend a whole lifetime like really understanding it, what it means, and how you move, and all these things, and like if you don't have like if you're not pretty well steeped in that, you should find someone else to facilitate it. But you really want somebody who knows what they're talking about and who's like more of an Enneagram expert.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. And is there any area in the organization that you've noticed the most benefit, the biggest impact with using the Enneagram? It could be with the leadership team specifically and the feedback process. Any specific area come to mind that's like, oh my gosh, this has really benefited us here.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly it was a good foundational piece for the executive team. We've done a decent amount of like Lencioni work after that, and I thought having the foundation around Enneagram and doing that work first was super powerful and helped build vulnerability. I can speak to one of my own teams as well that I think it's really helped. So for the folks on my team who run learning and development outside of Enneagram, I think having a baseline understanding of people's types in the like communication and problem solving area that we train on has been hugely helpful, because people are able to talk about like some of their ongoing communication dynamics that they have with coworkers and like use shared language. So I feel like it's been a pretty powerful amplifier for every other session we've done outside of that. And then I'm curious if there are other departments that you feel like it's been.
I mean, as the CEO, I find it very helpful. I'm sure Eliza finds this helpful as well. I just find it helpful to know what somebody's type is
Yeah.
because it really does change the way that you talk to them, or it can
Mm-hmm.
talk to them. It certainly changes the way they hear what you're saying. And so just to know what someone's type is really, really helpful information for helping somebody with their career, with their, career trajectory here, what they're working on, even how I'm talking to them. It's like, yeah, for example, like a type 3, which is the achiever, and cares a lot about like how people think about them, can be really amazing workers because they will just crank and crank and crank all the time.
Yes.
But you can't take advantage of that. You have to remember that they're a type 3, and every once in a while you have to be like, hey, you're doing a really good job. Like, thank you so much, and like, and then actually what I try to do is be like, I don't think that sunk in. Like, let me try again. Like, I just,
Oh,
really try to be like, you're doing a great job, because I know that they're just going to brush it off. And what else can I do to achieve? And while that's great as a business leader to be like, have those people, you also want to like be able to speak to them. And I think Enneagram has given me a really good like I don't know, like I change my language based on what I know about the other person.
were you gonna go ahead, Eliza?
I was just gonna say, building on that, we use, I can't remember the name of the article, but there's an article that I'm sure there are many resources like this that go through like based on your type, how do you best receive feedback? And we gave that to managers, and that was wildly powerful for them because to Mike's point, it's like, okay, I have, a 2. The way that I give feedback looks very different than if I have a 6 on my team. And so some folks who felt really stuck in the way they were communicating with some of their direct reports and like, I can't get this to land, they try a different approach. And then all of a sudden the person's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. So I think that's been really helpful for especially our newer managers.
I love that. The 3 example is something that just recently, almost that exact same situation, came up with another group out of their type specific table discussions. And the threes had said, it really means a lot when you give us feedback about how we're doing and recognize the effort. And there was an 8 leader, and he said, I've been really bad about that because you always do a great job. And I know you're always going to do a great job. So I'm going to slow down and make sure that I'm sharing that with you. And to your point, Mike, it's like, I want to make sure you really hear it. So
Yeah.
I really like that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your own leadership styles, if you're willing. So Mike, I know as the type 7, out of curiosity, what was it about that type that made you think, oh, okay, this is definitely me? What parts of the 7 are most relevant?
Well, I mean, the polite way to talk about a 7 is the enthusiastic visionary.
Mm-hmm.
right? So at the company, I'm kind of constantly being like, we should strive for more, we should do something bigger, we should believe in something much bigger. This whole company's been built on a belief of like changing the meat industry and doing something different,
Yeah.
right? That's all like enthusiasm and visionary and whatnot. The negative way to talk about the type 7 is the glutton.
Mm.
And the glutton shows up in a number of ways, whether it's like having my fifth cup of coffee that day, or like whatever, overeating or just like that world. But also like I'm like I have a really hard time when there's a problem that I've been introduced to. I become a glutton about it. I shut out everything. I shut out my family. I'm just like, oh, I got to solve this problem and really just go like way, way, way deep. Don't ask for help. Try to do it myself. And then there is like, on the side of so the snake in a seven's head, my words, the snake in a seven's head, meaning like the thing that pulls people out of happiness and consciousness. The snake in the seven's head is something like, this could be better if, right?
Mm.
So it's like the company could be doing an amazing job. We hit all our goals. We're doing really well. And I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm not happy about this, this, and this. And that can make me like kind of a pain in the ass to work with. It's like I'm always going to find something I'm not happy about. It's not even that I'm not really happy about it. The dark side of a seven is like I don't feel comfortable being content, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
like um that then plays out in a way in which I'm constantly like not happy with things and pushing harder and being more visionary, and that can be like really hard for a company, which is why I'm really glad someone like Eliza's here to counterbalance that, because that can be really hard for a company to deal with someone who's like, we don't need to celebrate, let's just like keep going.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. And I know obviously not all sevens are the same. There's no way to capture humanity in that. But um, I would say when I work with groups, I see the least amount of fours, fives, and sevens. And I think for sevens, a lot of times I'm working with corporations who have kind of more structured office hours, maybe at work in the office. So sometimes for the seven, working on the same thing kind of day in and day out can be challenging. They can absolutely do it, but it can be challenging. What advice would you have for other leaders out there or managers who have a seven on their team to help them kind of pull out the strengths that the sevens do have, while also helping them kind of navigate maybe some of the blind spots like the gluttony and the love for new ideas and constant need for excitement.
Yeah, so a seven goes to a one in stress. And a one is like, if for me, it's like if you're creating a checklist, you're in your one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the times where I'm like, I got a lot of stuff to do, like let me write down every single thing I'm going to do, and then like check, 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 check. I'm in my one. And if I'm honest with myself, I've been CEOing for almost 20 years. Like I spend a lot of time in one.
Mm-hmm.
Like so I am like a seven at my core, but I'm very repressed in that I move to one or I move to eight, because that's my wing. And so for any manager, I would notice the moments that people are in their one, and like you don't want to encourage people to be in their stress, but a lot of people show up at work in a stressed way. So it's kind of like help them with that. Like, oh, are you keeping a checklist? Like, cool, put this down on your checklist or something, just to like play into how they may manage themselves. But also like recognize that they're likely going to be constantly curious and constantly searching for other things. And I had very few people. I did have a couple jobs before I went out and became an entrepreneur. I had very few people who like harnessed my ability in that way, where they're like, "Oh, I'm interested in this. Hey, Mike, can you go figure that out?" Like, I love that. Like,
Mhm.
absolutely. Let's
Yeah.
go. So there are definitely things you can pass to a seven and get them really excited about the future. But I think well, one other thing I'll say and then pass it to Eliza is sevens are known to sometimes avoid hard conversations. Like
Yes.
feelings is what you're avoiding. You're avoiding
Mm-hmm.
feelings. You're avoiding like having somebody feel a certain way, which is why you do go to gluttony immediately. Like, oh, I'm tired. Let me drink a coffee or like eat something. or I'm sad, let me, go numb myself out. You have to be really careful with sevens that they're actually having the tough conversations, because they prefer not to.
Yeah. That is true. Eliza, anything from your perspective on leading, managing a seven from that kind of chief people role?
I think like to double down on what Mike said, the seven, I one of my direct reports is a seven. And being able to figure out how to take that curiosity and play into that and set up like learning environments where they can actually explore that and be in that space. I think that's a hard thing as a manager, right? Like our the business context doesn't really lend itself to that like
Hmm.
exploration and play. And so to Mike's point, if you can give them something that's like a new idea to go on in a rabbit hole on that they can learn a lot, something that's like cutting edge, like that definitely helps. And then I remember you telling me that about the one piece, and I've noticed that a lot. And I've tried to be more cognizant, at least with my direct reports. I can physically see the list when it happens with him. Like he'll
Yeah.
take it out, he's like writing it down. I'm like, oh, okay. Am I making you really anxious? So I think just like sort of continued vulnerability about it helps. And then the last thing I'll say is like not specific to a seven, but just like being able to have the conversation between coworkers around how your type and their type show up in stress, I think is huge for the way that you
Yeah.
work through and unlock potential because conflict obviously can be tough depending on what the two numbers are. And so just like having some tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, that always seems to be major light bulb moments when we get into that area of the Enneagram.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Eliza,
that's
and
fine.
I'm going to ask what is great about working with Mike and his seven strengths? And
Sure.
then what is something maybe you've had to learn to work better with, navigate around?
Sure. I think the piece that I appreciate most is that as a two, and especially someone who works in operations as a two, I can get very stuck in like the project or the tactical thing in front of me or like moving the work forward. And so having the balance of a seven to push thinking typically beyond what I can imagine is really, really good for me. Now, my gut reaction to that may at first be like, why are you ruining all these plans that I've made? I just want to do my project plan, go away. But the reality is that almost always that means like the idea is better thought out. It like pushes my thinking far beyond what my first pass would have been. And so I think if you can, at least for me, like if I can get out of my ego a little bit on it, I know that it's going to make the project or the work better. Um, and that you can play to the strengths, right? That like it's great if you don't have two people who are in the visionary seat because you're able to really like divide and conquer. And I think that's like often true of us. Um, and then the last thing I'll say is just like I think there's a curiosity and optimism that doesn't always exist
Mhm.
with a lot of other types, and I find that incredibly impactful for culture. Um, on the hard end, I think it's tied, right? It's like my type is much more like wanting to work the plans, build routine, build consistency. And so it can be hard to figure out like how to best balance a seven. Like when is it the right thing to be trying to add a bit more structure or to like not move on to the next shiny idea? And like when is that the best thing either for like the relationship or the business? And when is that too far and like it's stifling the seven? Like that line I
Mm.
find really hard. Um because it is kind of this like continuous balance between figuring out like how do you play to the strength of the visionary and how do you also like support it so you can actually make their ideas come true.
Is there anything, Mike, that you would share with other seven leaders that would be helpful for them to A, understand about themselves, and then B, communicate to the team, the company, like, hey, these are some things, this is something to know about me that you might misinterpret, or this is really helpful when communicating with me. Anything come to mind as for your fellow seven leaders?
Yeah, I think like for one, certainly with your executive team, letting people know as they get to know you better. Like it's hard for a business leader to admit like I'm going to be really excited about this for about a week and then I'm not
Uh-huh.
going to talk about it anymore. If you could either like do something about this or not, like that would be awesome. But
Like,
that's like really hard to communicate, right? Because it
Oh.
oftentimes executives like in a CEO position, you feel like you need to be like really buttoned up and
Mhm.
so you need the right people around you who are like, yes, like I actually see that there's some form of genius there and like we will go do that thing. Don't worry about it. And finding people who are like actually able to go and do some of this stuff is like pretty awesome. I do think there's also like making sure that you don't bring every idea because like I know I overwhelm when I'm like, well, what about this and what about this, but also that's just like a fraction of the stuff that is like running through my brain, right?
Yeah,
So it's been
they don't
filtered.
even, yeah.
No idea.
yeah,
It's like
this would be like so long.
so it's like you want to filter a fair amount
Hmm.
before you do. And then I think there's like if you're in a leadership position or running a company, I think that there's um this whole idea like it would be better if can create a really toxic environment if you're not careful, right? And so like even if you tell people like I've told people like sometimes I forget that I'm supposed to be celebrating. Could you help me out with that? And they'll be like,
Oh.
"Hey, this is a really big moment. We should celebrate." And I'm like, "I don't want to." Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So that just letting people know that that might be a blind spot of yours is pretty important as well.
Okay, and that's a great one because I think stereotypically sevens have a reputation for being the celebrators, the all the happy. But to your point, it's like, well, it's because I'm thinking about the next thing. I'm on to the next idea. I'm into the
Mhm.
future. So that's a great one. All right, Eliza, let's put you in the hot seat with your leadership style, if you don't mind.
No, no,
Now,
no.
what about the two who's striving to feel connected, sometimes known as the helper? What resonates with you the most with that type?
Yes. I would say so I mean the people pleasing part is totally true. I've done a lot of work on it. But I think like if we use I think you said the polite version, so I'll use that version first. Um, I derive a lot of joy from helping other people, from like working closely with others. I have pretty high empathy. And so it makes sense in my current role that I spend a lot of time working on that. And I think that's like where I get my energy source. I will say the piece around like not knowing your own limits, like working yourself until you're completely burned out and useless to people, spot on. And then the other part around like going to an 8 in stress is
Mm.
very real for me. So the like kind of flip between the 2 and the 8 really resonates, which is like I can in a non-integrated state, I would say I can either like not raise conflict, kind of like keep doing the thing, doing the thing, doing the thing until I hit my breaking point, and then I turn into an 8 and it becomes like controlling, like it's my way or the highway. Um, and so I mean much of the overview resonates with me. And I will say our CFO, who is my other counterpart, is an 8. Um,
Okay.
and he and I have done a lot of work on this together. And I think that has really helped me to understand the flipping in me, like if I'm in a state of stress. Um, and so I feel like very grateful to be in partnership with someone who is my like in stress number, because
Yeah.
it's taught me a lot about what that looks like.
Let me ask you this real quick because this is one of the pairings, the two and the eight, that sometimes have the hardest time understanding one another. What would you be willing to share an example of like either an insight or a specific situation where that 2A partnership you had the Enneagram insight that was able to help you?
Totally. He would be fine with me talking about this. So we had a really hard time when we first started working together, because we would let's say there was like something that was sort of a tense topic for the two of us, and we would walk out of a conversation, and he would feel like, wow, that was like really great debate. Like we went back and forth, like we landed at an outcome, and that's awesome, and we've moved on. Like had a lot of open questions and went back and forth, and I would be like near tears. Like I would be like, this person hates me. Like he doesn't think I'm smart. This is never going to work between the two of us. Like it was so brutal when we started working together. And I remember probably like 3 or 4 months into us work, because we work very closely together. Um, we had a conversation about it. And I was like, I think when we get into conflict, you and I walk out of that space with a very different understanding of how that conversation went. And I feel like we should just talk about it. And so we've worked a lot on that, which is that I now understand that his line of questioning is like that is genuinely the way that he seeks to understand. And his what will make him feel settled coming out of it is like that we have a clear plan that he understands. And that like that whole poking is like part of the way he engages in curiosity. And for me, he knows that like the relationship matters a lot, and like our friendship and connection and like me doing right by him is super important. And so I think he's like worked hard to validate when I'm doing that. Like he'll, he'll text or reach out and say like, hey, in X meeting, I saw you do XYZ, like that was amazing. Here's why. And I think it's a good example of if both people like know their types and are invested in
Yeah.
the relationship, it's the same relationship, but it feels completely different.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then Mike, I'm going to ask you the same question about Eliza. So what are some of the strengths of the two that you see Eliza have in her current role? And then what has been something that you maybe had to work a little harder to understand?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of context. I'm actually a week back from a sabbatical.
Okay. Oh,
I
that's
took, yeah,
right.
I took 3 months off this summer and left the company in the hands of Eliza and this eight,
And safe.
Steve. Um, and so you just, if you take like a big picture, like I spent my time like vision and getting to know myself better and being with my family and actually giving myself the space to like not be in my one and to just be like adventurous and enjoy life and all the things that life brings and really enjoy my time. Um, I could never have done that without Eliza. And so like her ability, and then that trickles into like work now, right? Like her ability to take my, and by the way, I don't want to come back and take all the stuff over because what I've realized is they're doing a better job than I did. Because it never really felt good. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's never felt good that I'm like supposed to be the visionary guy and I'm supposed to like make the trains run on time. It's just like don't
Yeah.
like that. I don't like that part. Like it bothers me. It makes me frustrated. Like I don't want to do it. And so now as I'm re-entering, it's like actually you guys are doing a much better job than I am. So like take all this stuff, right? And again, like without that too, without the discipline focus, without the desire to like both help people, which is really near and dear to me. Like I don't want to just use people as like cogs in the machine. I want to like help build their like life and career. But you take a helpful approach and a buttoned up approach. I can't think of a better uh, person than a two to be working with. Yes. And okay, so on
What a
the
great
negative side,
compliment.
however,
Like
Yeah, just take a minute and take that in to receive that.
we can just
Oh.
leave it at that. That's fine. Eliza's amazing. I think going back to like what I said you asked before, like what's one thing or how do you like handle other people or what can you reveal to other people? I oftentimes ask questions similar to Steve and his eight. And I think as Eliza was saying, like sometimes those questions that are just usually coming from a place of curiosity can like trigger her eight. And then I have an eight wing as well. So it's like, if you want to go, like let's go.
Eve has an eight, so
Yeah.
like the three.
Nate.
We're like, we'll just battle this out until someone wins.
Yeah, well, we all meet Nate.
Yeah, really.
So yeah, like I
Yeah.
think I think
Yeah.
and I think Eliza and I have done a much better job and are learning about like each other as we do this. But like even today, she was like, "Do you think we need to do this part so you can ask some questions?" And I'm like, "I don't think so. That it's fine." She's like, "I think we're going to do the part because you're definitely going to ask us, and it'll just fail everything if we don't just go through
That'll
it."
be really mad if you do it in the moment, but if
Yeah.
we talk about it now, I'll be fine.
Oh.
So there's like a better understanding of like what I, like how I operate, how she operates.
Ah, that's awesome.
It's a
And
really good point of like that the questions come from a place of curiosity. Like I think that's for a two an important thing to try to hold in mind. Like someone is not trying to derail your plan because they woke up wanting to derail your plan. They're like thinking about the problem in a different way, and like flexibility of thinking is important so you can meet their curiosity, but that's yeah, the eight can get kind of like, I don't want that.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and as a two who is striving to feel connected, sometimes that intensity or that questioning can feel like, oh, we're disconnected because you don't
Yeah.
trust me or you're questioning me and so it's like it's hitting a core. And it's for other people, it's like, yeah, we're going, we're just chit-chatting, we're debating, I think is what you said your coworker was saying. It's like, no, I kind of had a different experience.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Um, so what is there anything on the horizon that's next for how you use the Enneagram? Just how do you see it continuing to be used, evolve inside of ButcherBox?
I mean, one of the things that I've been curious about, but we haven't done anything with it, is so we did everyone's types, and then we plotted it on like an Enneagram, on the chart, and looked at like where people line up. So, for example, like my executive team is like a bunch of sevens, a bunch of twos, and then our CFO who's an eight, right? Which is
Interesting.
like
Okay.
kind of interesting. And I don't know enough to know how, like, does that mean that we don't have the right people in the room for like good, robust decision making? Or like I've heard about like head, heart, gut, like find people in
Mm.
each and kind of bring that to bear. But that's an area that I think we've done a really good job of like how do you you to yourself, like what's that relationship like? And then you to others, what's that relationship like? But like as a collective,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
what do you need to like make really great decisions and do really great work is something I'm really curious about. I don't know how to solve that, but it's curiosity.
Agreed. I think this is something we also have not done anything with, but it's related to it. I am curious about how it plays in with hiring, and it's like it's a tricky one, because I think you see a lot of examples of when it's not done particularly well, and it can be like used in a way that doesn't feel great. I think there is a place for it in hiring, and I don't exactly know what that looks like yet, but I think it would be interesting to look at that and then some of the collective team dynamics and figure out like, do you have the right group of people to solve the problems you're trying to solve? Uh,
Mm.
I think that could be powerful.
I just had fellow CEO who was a type A, and he was hiring somebody for his executive team who they had him take the assessment before they brought him on officially. And he had ranked really high as an eight as well in his initial assessment. And so I don't think their conversation was like, oh, we don't need another A or, oh, perfect. But it was, okay, so if we're this similar, what are we going to have? What am I willing to like work through? What sort of conversations do we need to have? And so to your point, it is a little tricky, but it can be helpful knowing, okay, this is how we get off on the right foot. These are some conversations we maybe need to have first. So,
Yeah, I love that idea as like an onboarding tool.
mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then the team map idea is, I think just anytime you can get a visual and just to your point, you don't have to have the answers to all the questions, but just start to see what does this mean and start to reflect on some things. I love that. So as we start to wrap it up, is there any final advice, words of wisdom, words of caution that you would offer to other leaders who are thinking about bringing in a tool like the Enneagram to their organization?
I think one of the reasons it's been so successful here is that we have a culture that is very heavy on coaching and identity work and self-exploration. And so I think understanding what your organization's relationship is to that kind of level of deep work is really important when you bring it in so that you can meet people where they are, and to figure out like how it fits in to the larger plan of helping people evolve. And so I would say in particular, like I think the relationship between Enneagram and then people having one-on-one coaches can be really impactful.
I think if you're, you listen to the podcast and you're like, oh, I'm really excited about like doing Enneagram within my organization. It's really important that you start with a belief that people are more than they are just at work, and that they're bringing their whole selves to work. It's not just about like them being a worker bee. Because if you don't believe that and you're not willing to like make space for that or like have those conversations, Enneagram's not really going to work. Enneagram is not a work style tool. Enneagram is like what is your, like who is your whole being? Like how are you wired? What is your software that you've been running since you were like 2 or 3 years old? And that's really important to like be like, yeah, I agree with that. Because some people like they don't actually care. It's like, no, just go do the work. Like I don't really care like how you feel about yourself. Like I just want you to go do the work. That's not at all like our approach here. Our approach here is we believe we can get much better performance and business results as a result of like treating people like the full human beings that they are, and inviting their authenticity and inviting like all of that into the organization. And so I would just say like if you're inspired, start with the philosophy of like I want to welcome people's whole selves to work. Get that done well, and then you can help people understand who their whole self is a little bit better.
What great advice. I have been impressed by the whole team. I've talked with Karen too, but last year when we were preparing and just the team, and I am pretty fortunate that I don't have to work with a lot of toxic companies, because if that's the case, they're probably not bringing in the Enneagram. But there have been people who have said where I've, made a cold call and said, I love this, but our management would use this against me. And you're like, oh man, I hate to hear that. So I think it's always so inspiring when we can hear from companies like yours, leadership styles like yours on how to your point, Mike, people, we are human beings having a human experience, and it's really hard to just be super robotic and very siloed all the time. And of course, there's a time and a place where you just gotta kind of cut it off and focus. But I appreciate the culture that you all have created, where your teams get to do that. So I don't know if you're hiring, but if you're looking, listeners, for a place, I think ButcherBox would have a great culture to be a part of. So with that, is there anything else that you would like to share that I haven't asked you about that would make this episode feel complete?
Well, I have one more thing. So if you like what we're talking about, yes, we are always hiring. So yes, please reach out. And if you like what we're talking about in terms of our mission and trying to help people eat healthier and help animals live a better life, you can go to butcherbox.com, and we've shipped the box to over 2 million households in this country, and are just growing a movement of people who believe that meat can be done better. Just like business can be done better, meat can be done better if you actually honor the animals and the environment and the farmers, and that's what we're trying to do here.
I'm so glad you said that. I was going to ask that at some point, and then I got off track. So that's my
You always got to
7.
put the
Woo!
plug in.
Got it.
Always selling, always selling.
No, that's so good. That is so great. So, and I think that helps with the company culture to have a meaningful mission like that. So,
For sure.
absolutely, please let's check that out. We'll link those in the show notes here. With that, I know you both are very busy, especially Mike getting back from your sabbatical. So, I appreciate you both, and for being so willing to share too. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.